okay, no, I can tell you what the catalyst moment for me was. So I had this long relationship with ayahuasca, as I said, like years,
Sure.
multiple years, and dozens of ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the purest experience that I had of having a relationship with a small g God, like a real one.
Yes.
Real one,
Yes.
right? Like grandmother ayahuasca, a real God
Yes.
that is the God of a particular group of people in the Amazon. That is their goddess,
Yes.
right? That they commune with, that tells them things. And all of the things that they said, it wasn't like some anthropological experiment or anthropological story that somebody hears on YouTube. I talked to the goddess,
Yes.
to their goddess, this spirit, small g God, right?
Yes.
Now, whether this is a demon, probably this could be considered to be a demon. It's definitely like an animistic nature spirit, right? And it does have some amount of knowledge. It can do some things for you. It is powerful, especially for somebody who's never had a real interaction with the God.
Yes.
To be like, oh, there's another entity here. And then after the ceremony, you talk to people and you've all experienced the same entity.
Yes. Yes.
And it's like, whoa, what is this?
Yes.
And getting a lot of insights and all of these things. So
I'm trying very hard to be quiet right now because, like,
go ahead.
I could go on and on about that. No, it's just, this is just the experience that people have. I mean, it's just,
That's it.
yeah. Yes.
And once you've had that, like, okay, this is all real.
That's the thing, is my brother was so into like psychedelics, and he kept trying to explain to me, and I was like, it's a chemical reaction in the brain, man. It's not real, blah, blah. It's like, and then like that feeling that I had 10 minutes in, I was just like, oh boy, like, oh, it's like Harrison Ford in The Force Awakens when he just turns and he looks at them, he's like, it's all real, the good, the light, all of it, it's all real, it's all true. And I was like, and then communing with the small g God. That's up for debate. We'll find out Judgment Day, because that spirit ended up kind of pulling me down to that church. Long story, different time. So
it is, well, it's, I mean, who are the demons working for at the end of the day? It's like, this is the interesting question.
Yes.
So for a large chunk of my life, the guidance that I was getting from ayahuasca was really guiding the decisions and choices that I was making. Now, if I look back, what's interesting was she was giving me all of these visions. They were warped. Like every single one of them was true, but it was all warped.
Yeah.
And so it's a really weird, it's very, very weird, very weird. And that's like probably a story for another day. But my last ceremony, before that ceremony, this was when I was, going through the history of Christianity. I had begun praying. I ran across this, like videos of this guy, Derek Prince, who was kind of like in the 80s and 90s, this Pentecostal preacher, I guess you could call him. Very interesting. But, the Pentecostals are one of the more of the Protestants. They're the ones who acknowledge the spirit world the most, for sure. And so, it was the first time I was listening to, I guess, a sermon that he was, not even a sermon, more a lecture that he was giving. I don't know, maybe it's from the 80s, where he says, just read a gospel. Just read a gospel as a story, and you'll see that Jesus's ministry was casting out demons and healing the sick. And I was like, what? What did you just say? Because I was like, no, I know the Bible. I've read the Bible. But then I realized, like, oh, no, Bible verses, bro.
Yeah.
Like these cherry-picked Bible verses.
Yes.
You have not read one gospel all the way through as a story of Christ. I was like, I haven't done that. And I read and I was like, oh yeah, Christ's ministry is casting out demons and healing the sick. And all of these stories are taking place while he's traveling around casting out demons and healing the sick. Yes. And the sermons that he's giving is people showing up to be healed.
Yes.
People are coming for healing, right? Spiritual and physical. They're coming to him for healing. And then even afterwards, the ministry of the apostles is healing.
Yes.
And healing through the word as well. So it's like, yes, you're going to be healed in the spiritual way, but then you're also going to be healed in this, like in the way of the logos. You're going to learn what that mechanism is.
Yes.
Right. And then I was like, oh, I don't know what Christianity is.
Yes.
That was what told me I have no clue what it is. And so then I started praying. And I didn't know how I was praying or anything. And it may have been through Derek Prince that I heard the first mention of, somebody mentioned the Jesus prayer. And he was mentioning it as like one of these powerful prayers that has been used since ancient times. And so I started not knowing how to pray, but like praying in earnest. And what really set it off to me was the last ayahuasca ceremony that I had. You know, part of going in before a ceremony, again, spiritual principles, you have to fast. So it's called a dieta.
Okay.
Can't eat meat, no sexual activity, no caffeine. Like you can go very heavy, but it's basically like seven days before.
Whoa.
And then 3 days before, definitely no sexual activity, none of that. So interesting, these spiritual principles, right? Before you're going to commune with the spirit.
Sure.
Before you're going to ingest the thing, it's like, well, you're going to need to do this particular dieta, this particular fast. And so I was always pretty good about doing that. And the last one that I had been praying for a few months, reading the gospel, really being like, ooh, this Christianity thing. And I got into the ceremony and I encountered Mother Ayahuasca. And she was like,
pissed.
That has got to go. That God, that Trinitarian God needs to be exorcised from you before you can come close and talk to me. She was like, you're not going to get anything from me.
Lord have mercy.
He's got to go. Get him out. And that just like, that shook me to where, and I got nothing from the ceremony, basically. Wow. Except her just being like, I refuse. He's got to go. Get that out of you. I can't talk to you.
That's weird. Because I just put that together. I just had a similar experience. That's
really
weird. After I was baptized, I tripped mushrooms in Kansas City, and that's the next day we decided that we were going to move to Kansas City. My wife and I went to an art museum, and then I was so set on having that same experience again. That's weird. And I had been baptized, and I had taken Eucharist for the first time, and I remember taking the mushrooms and going to the same art museum and expecting like a similar reaction. And there's all that hoodoo that we were talking about last time with Father, or the other time with Father. And I remember just like, they must have just been some bunk mushrooms. And let's not rule that out. But like, I was like getting nothing. I got nothing. And like the other one before that was so powerful. It was so, before I was baptized, it was so powerful. It was like a night I'll remember for forever. Not
they're spirits, and you're a vessel. And that really told me, and it was interesting. So it's not that I got nothing, but what I got was really weird. It's almost like she was revealed. So it's almost like the veil was pulled back on her in a way, because, you know, she was there and with me, but what I started to realize was she was like, it was like, I don't want to talk to you, but it's almost like we're here and communing. So it's like, you're here with me. And it was that it was almost like I got a glimpse of her. Because early on, maybe the second ceremony, one of the people who I had been in the first ceremony with, a young kid, was like, you know, you can ask her about her, right? You don't just have to ask her about like your questions or whatever. He's like, ask her about her and watch what happens. She loves to talk about herself. I'm like, really? Go into the second ceremony, get in there. And I'm like, okay, tell me something about you. And it was like, I was shot out of my body, back in time, zoomed over into the Amazon and plopped down into the Amazon. And she was like, see this environment? No one would want to live here. Do you know why people live here? Do you know why they stopped? She said they were traveling through here, and I found them, because they even say like, oh, how did you learn how to cook this ayahuasca brew? And the shamans say, oh, ayahuasca taught us, like taught our ancestors.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm the reason why they stopped here. I'm the reason why they continued to stay here. And she said, and now I want out. I want out of this jungle, and I want you to bring me out of this jungle. Meaning like, evangelize.
Sure.
Right. But this time, that last time when she was, like, get that thing out, one of the things that she said was, she was like, be a tree. This was one of the only things that she was like, I want you to be a tree. She's like, be a tree, be a tree. And I was like, what is this tree thing? She's like, oh, well, be a tree for your family. Be a tree, right? But then I saw her coiling, because she's a vine. Ayahuasca is a vine. And the things you get are very vine-like. Like, everything moves like this when you're dealing with her. So it was like, be a tree. And then I saw her wrapping around me, right? Like, be a tree. And the thing is, the vine uses the tree to climb so it can get to the sunlight, right? Because it's in the dark Amazon.
Sure.
It's dark down below. So it needs to climb up to get to the sunlight, and it gets up, and then the vine shoots out above the tree trunks with its leaves, above the treetop with its leaves, to get the sun. So it's like, oh, you're trying to climb me. Like, you're using me. You're riding me.
That makes sense.
Right. And that was that. So that was what I got on, like, the last ceremony. And then that solidified for me that, like, okay, this is super powerful. Christ is really, really powerful. And it is a part of my past, and it's a part of my path to orthodoxy. And so I talk about it because it happened. But please don't anybody think, one, that I would do it now, which there's no reason to. For me, there's no reason to. Like, I've found it. And two, not that I'm advocating that anyone else take that path, because you don't need to. And like I had said, that, like, had I been introduced to orthodoxy earlier, that is the path. I wouldn't have needed to take that path. So they're not recreational. They're not fun. Know that you are opening up a gateway to something that, chances are, if you're even willing to open up that gateway, you're not prepared for what's on the other side. None of us are.
100%.
So yeah,
like in the first Avengers movie, Thor talked about the Earth possessing the Tesseract, and how that calls to other civilizations, other peoples, that they're ready for a type of warfare that you're not ready for. Again, God is good. God knows the intentions of our hearts, and sometimes he can use that, of course, without a doubt. But that you are calling upon a type of warfare you are not ready for, and I was not ready for it. And a lot of my orthodoxy, this is one of the last things I'll say, a lot of my faith has been having to undo some of the things that in my brief time, like that one summer where I really did it probably maybe 10 times, having to undo. And obviously, like what I just said, I don't know if this is true, but like, obviously I pissed something off when I became Orthodox, because like I took it and I just thought that there was some bunk shrooms. Maybe that's true. Maybe it is. I don't know. But what Cyprian said kind of was like, well, maybe I pissed.
There's something there. I mean, it's my own anecdotal experience, but it's also reflected in the story of Saint Cyprian of Antioch. There's a war. These two sides are not compatible with one another
100%.
at all.
100%.
At all. So pick a side.
Pick a side. The path is narrow, y'all. It's very narrow. And I don't know. And the when I experienced, I thought everything was wide. I thought that the path was wide, that I was good. I was okay. Things were okay. So God is good. He uses those experiences, but like at the same time, God is powerless before you. He is powerless before your will. And if you want to continue on, and I know that people that are still wounded from this, and still
so do I.
Still being wounded, still refusing to let go of some of the things that they learned. So